In a quiet little town surrounded by dense woods and winding roads, there lived a woman named Evelyn Carter. She was in her late 40s with warm brown eyes that sparkled when she smiled and hands that were always busy, whether it was cooking, cleaning, or fixing something around her diner. The diner, which she had named Evelyn's Corner, sat right on the edge of Main Street, its neon sign flickering softly at night. It wasn't fancy, but it was cozy, filled with mismatched chairs, checkered tablecloths, and the smell of fresh coffee brewing every morning. People from all over town came not just for the food but also for the sense of belonging they felt inside those walls. Evelyn had built the diner from scratch after leaving an abusive marriage 10 years earlier. Those days had been dark, filled with fear and uncertainty, but she refused to let them define her. Instead, she poured everything she had into creating a safe space where people could come together, share meals, and feel seen. Her resilience earned her respect in the community, though some still whispered about her past behind closed doors. But Evelyn didn't care much for gossip. She focused instead on making sure everyone who walked through her door left feeling a little lighter than before. One chilly autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Evelyn locked up the diner after a long day of work. The streets were mostly empty except for the occasional car passing by. Just as she turned to head home, she noticed flashing lights coming from down the block. Curious, she stepped closer and saw two police officers standing beside their patrol car, their flashlights illuminating a man dressed in black leather. His motorcycle was parked nearby, its chrome glinting under the street lamp. Evelyn recognized him vaguely. He was one of the regulars at her diner, part of a group known locally as the Hells Angels. The scene unfolding before her seemed tense. One officer stood close to the man, speaking loudly while gesturing emphatically. The other hovered nearby, his hand resting casually on his holster. The man remained calm, his arms crossed over his chest, but Evelyn could see the frustration etched on his face. Something about the situation struck her as unfair. She couldn't hear exactly what was being said, but the tone of the officers' voices suggested they weren't simply asking routine questions. They sounded accusatory, almost hostile, even though the man hadn't raised his voice once. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, torn between staying out of trouble and stepping in. She knew how dangerous it could be to interfere with law enforcement, especially in situations involving groups like the Hells Angels. Yet as she watched the man stand there alone, outnumbered and cornered, something inside her stirred. Memories of her own struggles against powerlessness flooded back. The nights she spent hiding bruises, the times she stayed silent when she should have spoken up. This time, she decided, would be different. Taking a deep breath, she tightened her shawl around her shoulders and approached the group. "Excuse me?" Evelyn called out firmly, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. All three heads turned toward her, surprised by her sudden appearance. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, meeting the gaze of the nearest officer. He frowned, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. Please go back inside." Evelyn shook her head, refusing to back down. "This is my diner, and I don't appreciate seeing anyone treated unfairly right outside my door. If he's done something wrong, then fine. But if not, I'd like to know why he's being harassed." Her words hung in the air, bold and unyielding. The officers exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond to such direct confrontation. After a brief pause, one of them sighed and lowered his flashlight. "We're just doing our job, ma'am," he muttered, though his tone lacked conviction. Meanwhile, the man in leather looked at Evelyn with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice laced with sincerity. "You didn't have to do that." Evelyn gave him a small smile. "Everyone deserves respect no matter who they are or what they wear." With that, she turned and walked back toward her diner, her heart pounding but her step steady. As she disappeared inside, the officers issued a curt warning to the man and drove off, leaving him standing alone beneath the dim glow of the street lamp. Though Evelyn didn't realize it yet, her simple act of courage that night would set off a chain reaction unlike anything she could have imagined. Back inside the diner, Evelyn leaned against the counter, her mind replaying the events of the past few minutes. Had she made the right decision? Would there be consequences for challenging authority? Questions swirled in her head, but one thing was certain. She couldn't stand idly by when she believed someone was being treated unjustly. Sighing deeply, she began tidying up the kitchen, trying to distract herself from her racing thoughts. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and she headed upstairs to her small apartment above the diner where she fell into a restless sleep. The next morning dawned bright and crisp, the kind of day that promised new beginnings. Evelyn woke early, brewed herself a cup of strong coffee, and prepared to open the diner as usual. When she stepped outside to unlock the front door, however, she froze in disbelief. Stretching as far as she could see were rows upon rows of motorcycles, their polished frames gleaming in the morning sunlight. Dozens of men and women clad in leather jackets milled about, chatting animatedly and laughing among themselves. Some leaned casually against their bikes while others inspected the diner's sign with curious expressions. At first, Evelyn thought it might be some sort of prank or misunderstanding. There was no way this crowd was here for her tiny diner. But as she cautiously approached the nearest biker, a burly man with tattoos snaking up his arms, he greeted her warmly. "Morning, ma'am," he said, tipping an imaginary hat. "We heard what you did last night. Figured we'd stop by to say thanks." Evelyn blinked, momentarily speechless. "For me?" she managed to stammer. The man chuckled. "Yeah, for standing up for our brother. Not many folks would have done that." Before she could process what was happening, another figure emerged. From the crowd, a tall, imposing man with piercing blue eyes and a patch on his vest that read, "Sergeant at Arms." He introduced himself as Jack, the president of the local Hells Angels chapter. "We wanted to show our appreciation," he explained, his voice gruff but sincere. "What you did last night, it meant a lot to us. To all of us." Evelyn nodded slowly, still trying to wrap her mind around the surreal scene unfolding before her. "Well," she said finally, forcing a smile, "I guess y'all will need some coffee and breakfast, huh?" And so, the morning unfolded in a whirlwind of activity. The bikers filed into the diner, filling every available seat and spilling out onto the sidewalk. Evelyn worked tirelessly alongside her staff, serving plates of pancakes, eggs, bacon, and endless cups of steaming coffee. Despite the chaos, there was an undeniable energy in the air, a mix of excitement, camaraderie, and genuine warmth. The bikers weren't rowdy or disruptive. Instead, they joked and laughed among themselves, sharing stories of their travels and adventures on the road. They tipped generously, leaving crumpled bills on the tables and thanking Evelyn profusely for her hospitality. Word of the unexpected gathering spread quickly throughout the town. Passers-by stopped to gawk at the sea of motorcycles lining the street, while locals peeked inside the diner, eager to catch a glimpse of the commotion. By noon, Evelyn's corner was packed to capacity, buzzing with conversation and laughter. Regular customers mingled with the bikers, breaking bread and swapping tales. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt like her little diner truly belonged to everyone, not just the townsfolk, but outsiders too. As the day wore on, Evelyn found herself overwhelmed, not by stress, but by gratitude. These rough-looking individuals whom she had once viewed with suspicion had shown her nothing but kindness and respect. Their presence transformed her humble diner into something magical, a place where differences melted away and connections flourished. And as she moved through the crowded room, refilling coffee cups and exchanging smiles, Evelyn realized that her simple act of standing up for someone had sparked something extraordinary. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change her life forever. By the time the lunch rush began to wind down, Evelyn was physically exhausted but emotionally buoyed. The bikers lingered longer than expected, their laughter echoing through the diner as they shared stories and debated over steaming mugs of coffee. Some pulled out guitars, strumming soft melodies that added a layer of charm to the already lively atmosphere. Evelyn couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly the Hells Angels had integrated themselves into her world. What started as an impromptu visit had turned into a celebration of sorts. a testament to the power of human connection. Jack, the chapter president, approached Evelyn just as she finished clearing a table near the counter. His expression was serious now, though his eyes still carried warmth. "We need to talk," he said, motioning for her to follow him outside. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, unsure of what awaited her, but curiosity got the better of her. She grabbed her shawl from the hook by the door and stepped out into the crisp autumn air. The sunlight danced on the chrome of the motorcycles and the hum of distant conversations filled the background. Once they were away from prying ears, Jack turned to face Evelyn, his tone earnest. "Listen, we can't thank you enough for what you did last night," he began. "Not many people would have stood up for one of ours like that, especially not someone like you." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, amused by the implication. "Someone like me?" she echoed, her voice tinged with playful sarcasm. Jack chuckled softly. "You know what I mean. Someone who isn't part of our world. Someone who might have looked the other way." Evelyn shrugged, brushing off the compliment. It wasn't about being brave or anything like that. It was about doing what felt right. That man deserved respect same as anyone else. Her words hung in the air, simple yet profound. Jack studied her for a moment, as if trying to gauge whether she truly understood the weight of her actions. Finally, he nodded. "That's exactly why we're here. We don't forget kindness, Evelyn, ever." He paused, letting the gravity of his statement sink in before continuing. "So, we want to repay you somehow. Maybe sponsor some renovations for the diner or help promote your business. You name it. We'll make it happen." Evelyn blinked, taken aback by the offer. "Oh no, you don't have to do that," she protested quickly. "I didn't step in expecting anything in return. Really, it's fine." But Jack wouldn't hear it. He shook his head firmly. "This isn't about obligation. It's about gratitude. And trust me, when the Hells Angels say they'll support someone, they mean it." Evelyn opened her mouth to argue further, but something stopped her. Perhaps it was the sincerity in Jack's voice, or maybe it was the realization that refusing their help might come across as ungrateful. Either way, she relented with a small smile. All right, if you insist, I won't fight it. But let's keep things simple, okay? No grand gestures, just whatever feels natural." Jack grinned, clearly pleased with her response. Deal. True to their word, the bikers wasted no time showing their support. Over the following weeks, they became fixtures at Evelyn's Corner, arriving in groups large and small to enjoy meals and spread the word about the diner. Word of mouth traveled fast among their tight-knit community, and soon bikers from neighboring towns joined the ranks of regular patrons. They brought friends, family members, and even curious locals who wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Before long, Evelyn found herself serving more customers than ever before, her days busier and fuller than she could have imagined. But the Hells Angels didn't stop there. They organized events to draw even more attention to Evelyn's Corner. One weekend, they hosted a charity motorcycle ride, inviting riders from across the state to participate. The route ended at the diner, where Evelyn served free burgers and fries to hundreds of hungry participants. Another time, they set up a car wash fundraiser in the parking lot, donating all proceeds to a local shelter Evelyn supported. Each event strengthened the bond between the bikers and the town, proving that stereotypes often dissolve when people take the time to connect. As the months passed, Evelyn grew closer to the biker community. She learned their stories, their struggles, triumphs, and dreams. Many had faced hardships similar to hers: broken homes, lost loved ones, battles with addiction. Yet despite their tough exteriors, they were fiercely loyal, deeply compassionate, and endlessly generous. Evelyn admired their resilience and came to see them not as outsiders but as kindred spirits. In turn, the bikers respected her strength and determination, often referring to her as Mama E in affectionate tones. One evening, during a quiet lull at the diner, Evelyn sat at a corner booth chatting with a few members of the club. The conversation turned to the future, and someone jokingly suggested renaming the diner Hell's Kitchen. Evelyn laughed heartily, waving off the idea. No way. This place stays Evelyn's Corner. Always has, always will. Her declaration earned nods of approval from the group, reinforcing the idea that while much had changed, the essence of her establishment remained untouched. That same night, as Evelyn closed up shop and prepared to head upstairs, she noticed a familiar figure leaning against a lamppost outside. It was the man she'd defended months earlier, the one whose plight had sparked this entire chain reaction. He looked different now, less guarded and more at ease. When he saw her, he straightened up and walked over, his hands shoved into the pockets of his leather jacket. "Hey," he said simply, his voice gruff but warm. "Can we talk for a minute?" Evelyn nodded, intrigued. "Of course. What's on your mind?" The man hesitated, scratching the back of his neck nervously. "I just wanted to say, well, you probably saved my life that night. Those cops weren't playing around, and things could have gone south real quick if you hadn't stepped in." Evelyn listened quietly, her expression softening. "I didn't do anything special," she replied gently. "Just spoke up when it mattered." The man shook his head, disagreeing. "You have no idea how rare that is. Most people look the other way, especially when it comes to guys like us. But you reminded me that not everyone judges a book by its cover." He paused, searching for the right words. "Anyway, I owe you. Big time. So, if you ever need anything at all, you let me know, okay?" Evelyn smiled, touched by his sincerity. "Thank you," she said softly. "But honestly, seeing how much good has come out of that night is repayment enough." With that, the man tipped an imaginary hat and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. Evelyn watched him go, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. She thought back to the woman she used to be, the scared, broken version of herself, who hid bruises beneath long sleeves and avoided eye contact at all costs. How far she had come since then. Standing up for someone had not only changed the lives of others but also reinforced her own belief in the power of courage and compassion. Over time, Evelyn's Corner became more than just a diner. It became a symbol of unity and acceptance. People from all walks of life gathered under its roof, finding common ground over plates of food and cups of coffee. The Hells Angels remained steadfast supporters, ensuring the business thrived while fostering goodwill within the community. Together, they proved that differences didn't have to divide. They could unite, creating something beautiful and enduring. Years later, as Evelyn sat on the porch of her diner watching children chase each other near parked motorcycles, she reflected on the journey that had led her here. Her decision to stand up for someone that fateful night had rippled outward, touching countless lives in ways she never anticipated. Though she never sought recognition, Evelyn became a beacon of hope and resilience in her town, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can spark monumental change. And as long as her diner stood, so too would the bonds she forged with those who called themselves Hells Angels. The story of Evelyn Carter and her unexpected alliance with the Hells Angels spread far beyond the borders of her small town. Travelers passing through often stopped at Evelyn's Corner, eager to experience the magic firsthand. Locals proudly recounted tales of the black woman who stood up for justice, inspiring a community to come together. For Evelyn, however, the true reward lay not in fame or accolades, but in the daily reminders of what it meant to live authentically, to embrace humanity in all its forms and build bridges where none existed before. As weeks turned into months, Evelyn's Corner became more than just a diner. It transformed into a cultural hub where people from all walks of life converged. The Hells Angels continued to frequent the place, their presence drawing attention, not only from locals but also from travelers passing through town. Word spread about the unique bond between Evelyn and the bikers, sparking curiosity that brought new faces to her doorstep every day. Some came out of sheer fascination, others hoping to catch a glimpse of the infamous motorcycle club members who treated this humble diner like their second home. Evelyn welcomed everyone with open arms, regardless of their reasons for visiting. She greeted truck drivers hauling goods across state lines, families on road trips, and even tourists armed with cameras and guidebooks. Each customer was met with the same warmth and hospitality that had earned her a loyal following over the years. But it wasn't just Evelyn's charm that kept them coming back. It was the sense of community fostered within those four walls. Conversations flowed freely between strangers seated at shared tables. Laughter echoed off the walls, and stories were exchanged like prized possessions. The diner had become a microcosm of humanity, where differences dissolved over plates of food and cups of coffee. One chilly winter morning, as snowflakes drifted lazily from the sky, Evelyn arrived early to prepare for the day ahead. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, shaking off the cold before flipping on the lights. To her surprise, she found Jack already waiting for her, sitting at his usual booth near the window. His leather jacket was dusted with snow, and he cradled a steaming mug of coffee in his hands. Evelyn raised an eyebrow, amused by his unexpected appearance. "You're here awfully early," she remarked, hanging her coat on the rack behind the counter. Jack gave her a sheepish grin. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd stop by and see if you needed help setting up." Evelyn chuckled softly, touched by the gesture. "Help? From you? Now there's a first." Jack shrugged, unfazed by her teasing. "Hey, we've been meaning to pitch in more around here anyway. Figured today might be a good start." With that, he stood and began clearing tables, stacking chairs, and wiping down surfaces without another word. Evelyn watched him for a moment, marveling at how far they'd come since that fateful night months ago. Back then, she hadn't known what to make of these rough-looking individuals. Now they felt like family. By the time the diner opened its doors, several other bikers had joined Jack, each lending a hand wherever needed. They swept floors, arranged condiments, and even helped cook breakfast during the morning rush. Customers glanced curiously at the leather-clad figures moving about the space, some whispering among themselves about the unusual sight. Yet no one seemed bothered. In fact, many expressed gratitude for the extra effort being put into making their experience memorable. One elderly woman approached Evelyn after finishing her meal, tears glistening in her eyes. "This place feels like magic," she said softly. "Thank you for sharing it with us." That evening, as Evelyn tallied receipts and cleaned up after closing, she couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary was happening. Her little diner wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Business had skyrocketed thanks to the Hells Angels' unwavering support, allowing her to hire additional staff and expand her menu. Yet beyond financial success, there was a deeper fulfillment that filled her heart. Every interaction, every shared smile, every heartfelt thank you reinforced her belief in the power of kindness. Standing up for someone hadn't just changed lives, it had created ripples that extended far beyond what she could have imagined. The following spring, the Hells Angels decided to host an annual event called Ride for Unity in honor of Evelyn and her commitment to bringing people together. It was a massive undertaking, requiring weeks of planning and coordination. Flyers were distributed throughout the region, inviting riders from neighboring states to participate. Local businesses pitched in, offering discounts and promotions to encourage attendance. Even the mayor made an appearance at the kickoff ceremony, praising Evelyn for her role in fostering goodwill within the community. On the day of the ride, Main Street buzzed with excitement. Hundreds of motorcycles lined the roads, their engines rumbling like thunder. Riders wore patches adorned with symbols of unity, solidarity, and peace, a stark contrast to the stereotypes often associated with their lifestyle. Families gathered along the sidewalks, cheering as the procession passed by. Children waved enthusiastically, their faces lighting up at the sight of so many colorful bikes. At the end of the route, participants converged on Evelyn's corner, where a festival-like atmosphere awaited them. Food trucks parked alongside the diner, serving everything from barbecue ribs to funnel cakes. Live music played on a makeshift stage, drawing crowds to dance and sing along. Vendors set up booths selling handmade crafts, jewelry, and artwork, while volunteers handed out free balloons and face paint to kids. Amidst the chaos, Evelyn moved gracefully, greeting visitors and ensuring everyone felt welcome. She posed for photos, signed autographs, to her own disbelief, and accepted hugs from strangers who thanked her for inspiring such a remarkable event. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the festivities, Jack took to the stage to address the crowd. Holding a microphone in one hand and gesturing animatedly with the other, he spoke passionately about the impact Evelyn had made, not only on the Hells Angels but on the entire town. "She taught us that courage isn't about grand gestures or heroic feats," he declared, his voice carrying across the sea of faces. "It's about standing up when it matters most, even if it scares you. That's what Evelyn did, and because of her we've built bridges where there used to be walls." His words resonated deeply, earning applause and cheers from the audience. Evelyn stood nearby, listening intently, her cheeks flushed with emotion. When Jack finished speaking, he motioned for her to join him on stage. Reluctantly, she obliged, stepping into the spotlight as the crowd erupted into applause once again. For a moment, she simply stood there, overwhelmed by the love and admiration surrounding her. Then, taking a deep breath, she leaned toward the microphone. "I never expected any of this," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "When I opened this diner, my goal was simple: to create a place where people could feel safe and valued. I didn't realize how much that desire would resonate with others, or how profoundly it would change my life." She paused, scanning the sea of faces before continuing. "What I've learned is that connection is everything. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, or what you believe in. What matters is how you treat others, and whether you're willing to reach out even when it feels risky." Her speech ended with a standing ovation, leaving Evelyn both humbled and inspired. As fireworks lit up the night sky, signaling the conclusion of the event, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From standing up for a stranger on a dark street corner to uniting an entire community under one roof, she had discovered the transformative power of empathy and action. And though she remained modest about her contributions, others saw her for what she truly was: a beacon of hope and resilience. In the months that followed, Evelyn's influence continued to grow. Media outlets picked up the story of the Black woman who stood up for a Hells Angel, turning her diner into a symbol of unity nationwide. Journalists visited Evelyn's corner, interviewing patrons and capturing footage of the vibrant community that thrived within its walls. Articles appeared in newspapers and magazines, highlighting the unlikely alliance between Evelyn and the bikers. Television crews filmed segments showcasing the annual Ride for Unity, emphasizing the message of acceptance and compassion that defined the event. Despite the sudden fame, Evelyn remained grounded, focusing on what mattered most: her customers, her staff, and her mission to create a welcoming space for all. She refused lucrative offers to franchise her diner or write a memoir, insisting that her story belonged to everyone who walked through her doors. Instead, she channeled her energy into expanding her outreach efforts, partnering with local organizations to support causes close to her heart. Food drives, scholarship programs, and mentorship initiatives sprang up under her guidance, further solidifying her legacy as a force for good. Through it all, the Hells Angels remained steadfast allies, proving time and again that their loyalty ran deep. They volunteered at charity events, donated funds to struggling families, and stood guard outside the diner during late-night shifts to ensure Evelyn's safety. Their actions challenged preconceived notions about who they were and what they stood for, demonstrating that labels often fail to capture the complexity of human nature. Years later, Evelyn sat on the porch of her now iconic diner, watching the world go by. Children played tag near rows of parked motorcycles, their laughter mingling with the distant hum of engines. Bikers lounged on benches, sharing stories and swapping jokes. Regulars greeted her warmly as they entered the diner, their faces familiar, yet ever-changing. Evelyn smiled, content in the knowledge that her decision to stand up for someone had sparked a movement, one rooted in kindness, courage, and connection. Though she never sought recognition, Evelyn became a legend in her own right. Her name was whispered with reverence, her story told and retold as the years rolled on. Evelyn's Corner became more than just a diner. It evolved into a living testament to the power of unity and compassion. The annual Ride for Unity grew bigger each year, drawing thousands of participants from across the country. What had started as a small gathering of bikers and locals transformed into a multi-day festival that attracted visitors from all walks of life. People came not only for the thrill of the ride, but also to witness firsthand the bond between Evelyn and the Hells Angels. They wanted to see how a black woman who ran a modest diner had managed to bridge gaps that many believed were insurmountable. The event featured live music performances, food stalls offering dishes from around the world, and workshops aimed at fostering understanding and connection. Artists painted murals on the walls of nearby buildings, capturing scenes of diversity and harmony. Children played games organized by volunteers, while adults attended panel discussions led by community leaders about overcoming prejudice and building inclusive societies. Evelyn herself often took part in these conversations, sharing her experiences with humility and wisdom. She never claimed to have all the answers, but her authenticity resonated deeply with audiences, inspiring them to reflect on their own roles in creating change. One particular year stood out among the rest. It was the 5th anniversary of the Ride for Unity, and anticipation buzzed through the air like electricity. Organizers pulled out all the stops, inviting guest speakers, musicians, and activists to participate. Local schools held essay contests where students wrote about what unity meant to them, and the winning entries were read aloud during the opening ceremony. Evelyn listened intently as young voices echoed through the crowd, speaking of hope, acceptance, and the importance of standing up for one another. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized the ripple effect of her actions. The seeds she had planted years ago were now blossoming in ways she could scarcely have imagined. That evening, under a canopy of stars, Jack addressed the gathered masses, once again. Standing beside Evelyn on stage, he spoke of resilience, reminding everyone present that progress required effort and courage. Evelyn taught us that change begins with small acts, he said, his voice steady yet filled with emotion. Acts of kindness, acts of bravery, acts of defiance against injustice. Together we've shown that no matter where you come from or who you are, you can make a difference. His words were met with thunderous applause, and when Evelyn stepped forward to speak, the audience fell silent, hanging on to her every word. I didn't do this alone, she began, her voice soft but clear. Every single person here tonight has contributed to this movement in some way. Whether it's through volunteering, spreading kindness, or simply showing up, your actions matter, and they add up. She paused, scanning the sea of faces illuminated by flickering lanterns. What I've learned is that fear keeps us apart, but love brings us together. So let's keep choosing love, even when it's hard. Let's keep reaching out, even when it feels risky. Because when we do, miracles happen. Her speech ended with a standing ovation that lasted several minutes, leaving Evelyn visibly moved. As fireworks exploded overhead, painting the sky with bursts of color, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not just for the success of the event, but for the incredible journey that had brought her here. From standing up for a stranger on a cold autumn night to uniting a community under the banner of unity, she had discovered the transformative power of empathy and action. And though fame and recognition had found her, she remained steadfast in her belief that true fulfillment came from serving others. In the months following the anniversary celebration, Evelyn's influence extended far beyond her hometown. Anyway, coverage of the Ride for Unity reached global audiences, sparking interest from organizations and individuals eager to replicate its success in their own communities. Requests poured in for Evelyn to speak at conferences, schools, and community events. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she was qualified to offer advice or guidance. But encouragement from Jack and the Hells Angels convinced her to embrace the opportunity, viewing it as another chance to spread positivity and inspire change. Traveling became a new chapter in Evelyn's life, taking her to cities and towns she'd never imagined visiting. She shared her story with diverse audiences, tailoring her message to resonate with each group. In urban centers, she emphasized the importance of breaking down barriers created by socioeconomic disparities. In rural areas, she highlighted the value of neighborly support and mutual respect. No matter where she went, her core message remained the same. Kindness costs nothing but yields immeasurable rewards. Back home, Evelyn's Corner continued to thrive, Thanks in large part to the efforts of her growing team, she hired additional staff members, many of whom were former regulars who had fallen in love with the diner's mission. Some were recovering addicts seeking redemption, others were single parents looking for stable employment. Evelyn welcomed them all, providing not just jobs but mentorship and support. She encouraged her employees to pursue their passions, whether it was art, education, or entrepreneurship, knowing that empowering others would create a ripple effect of its own. Meanwhile, the Hells Angels remained integral to the diner's operations, contributing both financially and emotionally. They organized fundraisers to cover renovations and expansions, ensuring the space could accommodate increasing numbers of patrons. They also acted as unofficial security guards, patrolling the area during late-night shifts to ensure Evelyn's safety. Their dedication reinforced the idea that loyalty transcended boundaries, proving that people often defy expectations when given the chance. Despite her busy schedule, Evelyn made time for personal connections, maintaining relationships with those who mattered most. She hosted monthly dinners exclusively for the Hells Angels, serving hearty meals and listening to updates about their lives. These gatherings reminded her of the early days when the bikers first flooded her diner, filling it with laughter and camaraderie. Though circumstances had changed, the essence of their bond remained unchanged, a mutual respect built on shared values and experiences. One crisp fall morning, as Evelyn prepared to open the diner, she received an unexpected visitor. A young man dressed in worn jeans and a leather jacket stood outside, clutching a helmet in one hand. He looked nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot as Evelyn approached. "Can I help you?" she asked kindly, noting the uncertainty in his eyes. I heard about your diner," he stammered, "and about what you did for my uncle. He said you saved him once, and now I'm hoping you can save me too." Evelyn studied him carefully, sensing the vulnerability beneath his tough exterior. "Come inside," she said gently, holding the door open. Over coffee and pancakes, the young man, whose name was Marcus, shared his story. He had grown up idolizing his uncle, a member of the Hells Angels, but struggled to find his place in the world. After dropping out of school and bouncing between dead-end jobs, he found himself at a crossroads. Desperate for direction, he turned to the one person his uncle trusted most: Evelyn. Moved by his honesty, Evelyn offered Marcus a job at the diner, starting him off with simple tasks like washing dishes and bussing tables. Over time, she mentored him, teaching him skills that went beyond cooking and cleaning. She encouraged him to dream big, helping him enroll in online courses and apply for scholarships. Slowly but surely, Marcus began to rebuild his life, finding purpose and belonging within the walls of Evelyn's corner. His transformation served as a reminder that second chances, when paired with determination, could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Years later, as Evelyn sat on the porch of her diner watching children play near parked motorcycles, she reflected on the countless lives her decision to stand up for someone had touched. Her little diner wasn't just a business, it was a beacon of hope, a sanctuary for those seeking refuge from judgment and hardship. Through acts of courage and kindness, she had forged bonds that transcended stereotypes and united communities. And though she remained humble about her contributions, others saw her for what she truly was: a symbol of resilience, compassion, and unwavering faith in humanity. For Evelyn, the true reward lay not in accolades or headlines, but in the daily reminders of what it meant to live authentically, to embrace humanity in all its forms and build bridges where none existed before. And as long as Evelyn's corner stood, so too would the bonds she forged with those who called themselves Hells Angels. As the years continued to unfold, Evelyn's influence stretched even further, touching lives in ways she could never have anticipated. Her story became a beacon of hope for people struggling with their own battles. Whether it was overcoming adversity, finding acceptance, or simply believing that small acts of kindness could spark monumental change, news outlets from across the globe featured her journey, turning Evelyn's corner into more than just a diner. It became a symbol of resilience and unity. Yet, Despite the growing attention, Evelyn remained grounded, focusing on the everyday, moments that made her work meaningful. One winter morning, as snow blanketed the town and icicles hung like crystals from rooftops, Evelyn opened the diner early to prepare for the day ahead. She had barely flipped the sign to open when a young woman walked in, bundled in layers of clothing, her cheeks flushed red from the cold. The woman hesitated by the door, glancing around nervously before approaching the counter. "Hi," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm looking for Evelyn." Evelyn smiled warmly, recognizing the uncertainty in the woman's eyes. "That's me," she replied, setting down the coffee pot she'd been holding. "What can I do for you?" The woman introduced herself as Sarah, explaining that she had traveled hours to reach Evelyn's corner after hearing about its reputation as a place of refuge. Sarah confided that she was fleeing an abusive relationship and had nowhere else to turn. She didn't have much money but hoped Evelyn might spare a warm meal or perhaps offer some advice. Without hesitation, Evelyn ushered Sarah to a booth near the window, wrapping her in a blanket from the storage closet. She brought over a steaming plate of pancakes, eggs, and bacon, along with a cup of hot cocoa topped with whipped cream. "Eat first," Evelyn instructed gently, "then we'll figure things out." As Sarah ate, tears streaming silently down her face, Evelyn sat beside her, offering words of comfort and reassurance. By the end of the meal, a plan began to take shape. Evelyn connected Sarah with local shelters and support groups, ensuring she had access to resources that could help her rebuild her life. This wasn't the first time Evelyn had encountered someone in need, nor would it be the last. Over the years, her diner became a safe haven for individuals navigating difficult circumstances: runaways seeking shelter, veterans battling PTSD, immigrants adjusting to new lives in unfamiliar lands. Each person who crossed her threshold carried their own burdens, yet Evelyn treated them all with the same compassion and dignity. She listened without judgment, offered practical assistance whenever possible, and reminded them that they weren't alone. The Hells Angels played a crucial role in supporting these efforts, using their network to amplify Evelyn's mission. They organized fundraisers to provide financial aid for those in crisis, collected clothing and supplies for distribution, and volunteered their time to assist with various initiatives. Their involvement dispelled lingering stereotypes about the club, showcasing their capacity for empathy and generosity. Many townsfolk who had once viewed the bikers with suspicion now regarded them as pillars of the community, thanks largely to their partnership with Evelyn. One particularly memorable initiative involved converting an abandoned building adjacent to the diner into a transitional housing facility. Funded entirely by donations from the Hells Angels and other supporters, the project provided temporary accommodation for individuals and families in need. Evelyn oversaw the renovations personally, enlisting volunteers to paint walls, install furniture, and landscape the surrounding property. When the facility finally opened its doors, it quickly filled with grateful residents eager to start anew. Among them was Marcus, the young man who had once sought Evelyn's guidance years earlier. Having completed his education and secured stable employment, he returned to the diner not as a troubled youth, but as a mentor determined to pay forward the kindness he had received. He worked closely with Evelyn, helping newcomers adjust to their surroundings and offering encouragement based on his own experiences. His transformation inspired others to believe in the possibility of redemption, reinforcing the idea that everyone deserved a second chance. Despite the countless successes, Evelyn faced challenges too. Critics accused her of enabling criminals by associating with the Hells Angels, while skeptics questioned her motives, suggesting she craved attention or profit. Some even tried to shut down events like the Ride for Unity, claiming they disrupted the peace and attracted troublemakers. But Evelyn refused to let negativity deter her. Instead, she leaned on her faith and the unwavering support of her allies, proving time and again that love and determination could overcome fear and prejudice. On one such occasion, a group of protesters gathered outside the diner during the annual Ride for Unity, holding signs that read "No Gangs Allowed" and shouting insults at attendees. Tensions ran high as bikers and locals exchanged heated words, threatening to escalate into violence. Sensing the potential for disaster, Evelyn stepped outside, positioning herself between the two factions. Raising her hands in a gesture of peace, she addressed the crowd in a calm but firm voice. "I understand your concerns," she began, her tone measured yet resolute. "But this isn't about gangs or politics. It's about people coming together to celebrate unity and compassion. If you're willing, I invite you to join us inside. Have a cup of coffee, share a meal, and get to know the faces behind the leather jackets. You might be surprised by what you find." Her words silenced the protesters momentarily, prompting several to lower their signs and enter the diner cautiously. Inside, they were greeted with warmth and hospitality, their preconceived notions challenged by genuine interactions. Over time, incidents like these became fewer and farther between as the community embraced Evelyn's vision of inclusivity. Even former detractors softened their stance, acknowledging the positive impact her efforts had on the town. Businesses thrived. Schools reported improved attendance rates and crime levels dropped significantly, a testament to the power of collaboration and understanding. Evelyn's Corner stood at the heart of this transformation, serving as both a literal and metaphorical meeting point for diverse groups united by shared values. As spring gave way to summer, preparations for the next ride for unity kicked into high gear. This year promised to be special, marking a decade since Evelyn's courageous stand against injustice. Organizers planned a series of events designed to honor the milestone, including a documentary screening chronicling the diner's evolution, a photography exhibit featuring portraits of regular patrons, and a gala dinner celebrating achievements within the community. Invitations went out to dignitaries, activists, and celebrities, many of whom eagerly accepted, eager to witness the magic firsthand. The night of the gala arrived, transforming Evelyn's Corner into a glittering venue adorned with fairy lights and floral arrangements. Guests mingled beneath the stars, savoring gourmet dishes prepared by renowned chefs who had volunteered their services. Speeches praised Evelyn's leadership and innovation, highlighting the ripple effect of her actions. Jack took to the stage once again, presenting her with a custom-made plaque engraved with the words, "Guardian of Unity." Tears glistened in Evelyn's eyes as she accepted the award, overwhelmed by the outpouring of gratitude and admiration. Yet, amidst the glitz and glamour, Evelyn remained focused on the true purpose of the celebration, honoring the collective spirit that had propelled her journey forward. In her closing remarks, she emphasized the importance of continuing to break barriers and challenge assumptions. "We've come so far," she said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "But there's still work to be done. Let's keep pushing boundaries, reaching out, and lifting each other up, because when we do, anything is possible." Her speech ended with a standing ovation that seemed to last forever, leaving Evelyn humbled and inspired. As fireworks illuminated the sky, signaling the conclusion of another successful event, she reflected on the incredible path that had led her here. From standing up for a stranger on a dark street corner to uniting a community under the banner of love and acceptance, she had discovered the transformative power of courage and compassion. And though fame and recognition had found her, she remained steadfast in her belief that true fulfillment came from serving others. Years later, as Evelyn sat on the porch of her iconic diner watching children chase bubbles near rows of parked motorcycles, she marveled at how far she had come. Her little establishment wasn't just a business, it was a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could create waves of change. Through laughter, tears, trials, and triumphs, Evelyn had forged bonds that transcended stereotypes and united communities. And as long as Evelyn's Corner stood, so too would the legacy of love, courage, and connection she had built alongside those who called themselves Hell's Angels. As the years continued to roll by, Evelyn's Corner became more than just a diner or a symbol of unity. It evolved into a living legacy that touched countless lives in profound ways. The annual Ride for Unity had grown into one of the largest gatherings of its kind, drawing visitors from across the globe. People came not only for the spectacle but also to witness the extraordinary bond between Evelyn and the Hell's Angels, a connection rooted in mutual respect and shared values. What started as an impromptu act of courage on a chilly autumn night had blossomed into something far greater, a movement that inspired others to challenge stereotypes, embrace diversity, and find common ground. One summer afternoon, as Evelyn stood behind the counter serving coffee to a steady stream of customers, she noticed a familiar face walk through the door. It was Sarah, the young woman who had once sought refuge at her diner years earlier. Now Sarah looked different. Her eyes sparkled with confidence, and she carried herself with a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. She approached, Evelyn with a broad smile, holding the hand of a little boy who clung shyly to her side. "Evelyn," Sarah said warmly, "I wanted you to meet someone." Evelyn bent down slightly to greet the child, whose wide eyes took in the bustling diner with wonder. "This is Liam," Sarah explained, pride evident in her voice. "He's 5 now, and he's the reason I keep fighting every day." Evelyn's heart swelled as she listened to Sarah recount how far she had come since leaving her abusive past behind. With help from local shelters and support networks recommended by Evelyn, Sarah had completed vocational training and secured a stable job. She now lived in a cozy apartment with Liam, building a life filled with hope and possibility. "I owe it all to you," Sarah added softly. "You gave me a second chance when no one else would." Moments like these reminded Evelyn why she did what she did. Her efforts weren't about recognition or accolades. They were about making a difference, however small, in the lives of those around her. Whether it was offering a warm meal to someone in need, providing guidance to a lost soul, or simply listening without judgment, Evelyn believed that every interaction mattered. And over time, these seemingly insignificant acts added up, creating ripples that extended far beyond her tiny diner. The Hells Angels remained steadfast partners in Evelyn's mission, their involvement deepening as they witnessed firsthand the impact of their collective efforts. They organized charity rides, raised funds for community projects, and volunteered countless hours to ensure Evelyn's initiatives succeeded. Their presence challenged preconceived notions about who they were and what they stood for, proving that people often defy expectations when given the opportunity to shine. Locals who had once viewed them with suspicion now regarded them as trusted allies, working side by side to improve the town. One particularly memorable project involved renovating a dilapidated park at the edge of town. Once a haven for drug dealers and vandalism, the space had fallen into disrepair, becoming an eyesore that residents avoided. Determined to reclaim it, Evelyn spearheaded a campaign to transform the area into a vibrant community hub. The Hells Angels led the charge, recruiting volunteers and securing donations of materials and equipment. Together, they cleared debris, planted trees, installed playground structures, and painted murals depicting themes of peace and unity. When the park reopened months later, it quickly became a favorite spot for families, joggers, and picnickers alike. On the day of the grand reopening ceremony, Evelyn watched proudly as children laughed and played under the bright sun. Parents relaxed on benches nearby, chatting amiably while keeping an eye on their kids. Even the mayor attended, delivering a speech praising the collaborative effort that had brought the park back to life. As Evelyn stepped forward to thank everyone involved, she couldn't help but marvel at how much the town had changed since that fateful night years ago. Back then, she had simply acted on instinct, standing up for someone she believed deserved better. Now, her actions had sparked a chain reaction that transformed not only her own life, but also the lives of countless others. Despite her growing influence, Evelyn never lost sight of the importance of staying grounded. She continued to prioritize personal connections, maintaining relationships with those who mattered most. Each month she hosted private dinners exclusively for the Hells Angels, serving hearty meals and listening intently as they shared updates about their lives. These gatherings reinforced the idea that loyalty transcended boundaries, built on trust and shared experiences. Though circumstances had shifted dramatically, the essence of their bond remained unchanged, a testament to the enduring power of kindness and understanding. One crisp autumn morning, as Evelyn prepared to open the diner, she received a letter in the mail. Its contents surprised her. an invitation to speak at a prestigious conference on social justice and community empowerment. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she was qualified to offer advice or guidance. But after consulting with Jack and her closest confidants, she decided to accept the opportunity, viewing it as another chance to spread positivity and inspire change. Traveling to the conference proved to be both exhilarating and humbling. For the first time, Evelyn found herself addressing audiences far larger than those gathered at the Ride for Unity. Attendees ranged from activists and academics to policymakers and philanthropists, all eager to learn from her experiences. Evelyn tailored her message to resonate with each group, emphasizing the importance of breaking down barriers, fostering inclusivity, and empowering marginalized voices. No matter where she went, her core message remained the same. Kindness costs. Nothing but yields immeasurable rewards. Back home, Evelyn's Corner continued to thrive, thanks in large part to the dedication of her growing team. Many employees had started as regular patrons who fell in love with the diner's mission, while others joined seeking stability and purpose. Evelyn encouraged them to pursue their dreams, whether it was furthering their education, starting businesses, or exploring creative passions. She knew that empowering others would create a ripple effect of its own, inspiring them to pay forward the kindness they had received. Meanwhile, the Hells Angels remained integral to the diner's operations, contributing both financially and emotionally. They organized fundraisers to cover renovations and expansions, ensuring the space could accommodate increasing numbers of patrons. They also acted as unofficial security guards, patrolling the area during late-night shifts to ensure Evelyn's safety. Their unwavering support reinforced the idea that loyalty transcended boundaries, built on shared values and mutual respect. Years later, as Evelyn sat on the porch of her iconic diner watching children chase bubbles near rows of parked motorcycles, she reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. Her decision to stand up for someone had sparked a movement, one rooted in courage, compassion, and connection. Through laughter, tears, trials, and triumphs, Evelyn had forged bonds that transcended stereotypes and united communities, and though fame and recognition had found her, she remained steadfast in her belief that true fulfillment came from serving others. For Evelyn, the true reward lay not in accolades or headlines, but in the daily reminders of what it meant to live authentically, to embrace humanity in all its forms and build bridges where none existed before. And as long as Evelyn's Corner stood, so too would the bonds she forged with those who called themselves Hells Angels. As Evelyn grew older, the weight of her accomplishments never seemed to rest heavily on her shoulders. Instead, she carried them lightly, like a warm shawl knitted by the hands of those she had helped along the way. Her diner, now a landmark in its own right, continued to serve as a beacon for people searching not just for food but for hope and belonging. The walls were adorned with photographs, letters, and mementos from years past. Snapshots of smiling faces at charity events, thank you notes scrawled in shaky handwriting, and newspaper clippings chronicling the journey that had transformed a small-town woman into a symbol of unity. One crisp spring morning, Evelyn arrived early to prepare for the day ahead. She unlocked the door, flipped on the lights, and began setting up the tables. As she worked, she noticed something unusual, a folded piece of paper tucked under the edge of the counter. Curious, she picked it up and opened it carefully. The note was written in neat cursive. "Thank you for showing me that kindness doesn't have limits. You saved my life." There was no signature, only a small drawing of a heart at the bottom. Evelyn smiled softly, tucking the note into her apron pocket. Moments like these reminded her why she kept going, even when fatigue threatened to creep in. Later that afternoon, as customers filled the diner, Evelyn spotted a familiar figure walking toward the entrance. It was Marcus, the young man who had once sought refuge in her care after struggling to find his place in the world. Now he stood tall and confident, dressed in professional attire and carrying a briefcase. He greeted Evelyn warmly, pulling her into a tight hug. "I wanted to show you something," he said, his voice brimming with excitement. From his bag, He pulled out a framed certificate announcing his promotion to a leadership role at a nonprofit organization focused on youth mentorship. "This is all because of you," he added, his eyes glistening with emotion. Evelyn shook her head gently, refusing to take full credit. "You did this, Marcus. I just gave you a little nudge." But Marcus wouldn't hear it. "No, Evelyn. You didn't just give me a job. You gave me purpose. And now I get to do the same for others." His words lingered in the air, a reminder of how one act of compassion could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond what anyone might expect. The Hells Angels remained an ever-present force in Evelyn's life, their loyalty unwavering despite the passage of time. They celebrated milestones with her, the anniversaries of the Ride for Unity, the opening of new community projects, and even quieter moments like birthdays and holidays. One such occasion was Evelyn's 60th birthday, which the club decided to mark with a surprise party unlike any other. When Evelyn arrived at the diner that evening, expecting a quiet night alone, she found it packed with friends, family, and strangers whose lives she had touched over the years. Balloons hung from the ceiling, banners decorated the walls, and a massive cake sat proudly on the counter, emblazoned with the words, "To Mama E, our hero." Jack stepped forward to deliver a heartfelt speech, his voice thick with emotion. "Evelyn isn't just our friend or ally," he began. "She's family. She taught us that courage isn't about grand gestures. It's about standing up when it matters most, even if it scares you. Because of her, we've built bridges where there used to be walls." His words earned thunderous applause, and when Evelyn finally spoke, her voice trembled with gratitude. "I didn't do this alone," she said simply. "Every single person here has contributed to this movement in some way. Together, we've created something beautiful." Despite the accolades and admiration, Evelyn never lost sight of the importance of staying humble. She continued to prioritize the needs of others, often working behind the scenes to ensure that resources reached those who needed them most. Whether it was organizing food drives for struggling families, mentoring young entrepreneurs, or advocating for marginalized groups, Evelyn poured herself into causes that aligned with her values. Her efforts inspired others to follow suit, creating a culture of giving back that extended far beyond her immediate circle. One particularly challenging winter brought freezing temperatures and record snowfall, leaving many residents without access to basic necessities. Evelyn sprang into action, coordinating with the Hells Angels to set up emergency shelters and distribute supplies. Trucks loaded with blankets, firewood, and canned goods rolled into neighborhoods, driven by volunteers eager to help. At the center of it all was Evelyn, tirelessly overseeing operations while ensuring everyone felt seen and valued. Her dedication earned widespread praise, but she brushed off compliments, insisting that it was simply the right thing to do. As the years passed, Evelyn began to think more about her legacy. She knew she couldn't run the diner forever, and the thought of stepping away filled her with both relief and apprehension. Who would carry the torch? Who would ensure that the spirit of unity and compassion endured long after she was gone? These questions weighed on her mind until one evening, as she closed up shop and reflected on the day's events, she realized the answer lay within the very community she had helped build. Evelyn gathered her closest allies, the Hells Angels, former employees, longtime patrons, and local leaders, for a candid conversation about the future. "This diner isn't mine," she told them firmly. "It belongs to all of us. If we want it to continue thriving, we need to work together to keep its mission alive." Inspired by her words, the group formed a committee dedicated to preserving Evelyn's Corner as a space for connection and inclusivity. Plans were made to establish scholarships for aspiring entrepreneurs, fund community art programs, and expand outreach initiatives targeting underserved populations. In the final chapter of her active involvement with the diner, Evelyn took on a mentorship role, guiding younger generations as they stepped into leadership positions. She shared stories of resilience, offered advice on navigating challenges, and encouraged them to dream boldly. Her wisdom became a guiding light for those eager to carry forward the values she had instilled in them. Among her protégés was Sarah, the the young mother who had once sought refuge in Evelyn's care. Now a successful business owner herself, Sarah took charge of managing daily operations at the diner, ensuring that its doors remained open to anyone in need. Years later, as Evelyn sat on the porch of her home overlooking the bustling streets, below, she felt a profound sense of peace. Her body may have slowed with age, but her spirit remained as vibrant as ever. Children still played near rows of parked motorcycles outside the diner, their laughter echoing through the air. Bikers lounged on benches, sharing stories and swapping jokes. Regulars greeted Sarah warmly as they entered, their faces familiar yet ever-changing. Evelyn smiled, content in the knowledge that her decision to stand up for someone had sparked a movement, one rooted in courage, compassion, and connection. Through laughter, tears, trials, and triumphs, Evelyn had forged bonds that transcended stereotypes and united communities. She had proven that love and determination could overcome fear and prejudice, inspiring countless others to follow in her footsteps. And though fame and recognition had found her, she remained steadfast in her belief that true fulfillment came from serving others. For Evelyn, the true reward lay not in accolades or headlines but in the daily reminders of what it meant to live authentically, to embrace humanity in all its forms, and build bridges where none existed before. And as long as Evelyn's corner stood, so too would the legacy of love, courage, and connection she had built, alongside those who called themselves Hell's Angels. As the sun set on another bustling day at Evelyn's corner, casting a golden glow over the diner and its surroundings, Evelyn found herself reflecting on the countless lives her journey had touched. The diner, once a modest establishment built from the ashes of her own struggles, had grown into something far greater than she ever imagined. It was no longer just a place to grab a meal. It was a sanctuary, a meeting ground, and a symbol of hope for people from all walks of life. Yet, despite its growth and fame, Evelyn ensured that it remained rooted in the values she held dear: kindness, inclusivity, and resilience. One evening, as Evelyn sat alone in her cozy apartment above the diner, she sifted through old photographs and letters stored in a wooden box. Each item told a story: a snapshot of a child smiling during the annual Ride for Unity, a handwritten note from a stranger thanking her for a warm meal, a faded flyer advertising the first charity motorcycle ride. These mementos were more than keepsakes. They were reminders of the ripple effect her actions had created. What began as a single act of courage on a dark street corner had sparked a movement that transcended boundaries and united communities. Evelyn thought back to the early days when standing up for someone felt like stepping into uncharted territory. She remembered the fear that gripped her heart as she approached the police officers, unsure of how they would react. But she also remembered the clarity that followed, the realization that doing what was right mattered more than staying silent. That moment had changed not only her life but also the lives of those around her. The Hell's Angels, once seen as outsiders, had become pillars of the community because of her willingness to see beyond stereotypes. Strangers had turned into friends, and enemies had transformed into allies, all because of one woman's decision to stand firm in her beliefs. The years had brought challenges too. Critics questioned her motives, skeptics doubted her methods, and there were times when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. But Evelyn persevered, drawing strength from the people who believed in her mission. Jack and the Hell's Angels stood by her side, offering unwavering support and protection. Sarah, Marcus, and countless others whose lives she had touched returned the favor by giving back to the community in their own ways. Together, they proved that unity wasn't about erasing differences. It was about celebrating them and finding common ground. As Evelyn aged, she began to step back from the day-to-day operations of the diner, entrusting its care to the next generation. Sarah took the reins with grace and determination, ensuring that Evelyn's Corner continued to thrive while staying true to its founding principles. Under her leadership, the diner expanded its outreach programs, partnering with schools, shelters, and organizations to address pressing social issues. New faces joined the team, bringing fresh ideas and energy while familiar ones remained, anchoring the diner in tradition and history. Even in retirement, Evelyn remained a guiding presence. She spent her days mentoring young entrepreneurs, sharing stories of resilience, and encouraging them to dream boldly. Her wisdom became a beacon for those navigating their own paths, inspiring them to overcome obstacles and make a difference in the world. On weekends, she could often be found sitting at her favorite booth near the window, sipping coffee and chatting with patrons. To many, she was still Mama E, the heart and soul of the diner. One crisp autumn morning, as Evelyn strolled through the park she had helped renovate years earlier, she marveled at how much the town had changed since that fateful night. Children laughed as they played on swings and slides, families picnicked beneath shady trees, and joggers greeted each other with friendly smiles. The once neglected space now pulsed with life, a testament to the power of collaboration and vision. Evelyn paused by a mural painted on a nearby wall, its vibrant colors depicting scenes of diversity and harmony. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Dedicated to Evelyn Carter, whose courage inspired us all." Tears welled in her eyes as she traced the inscription with her fingers. She had never sought recognition or praise, yet here was proof that her efforts had left an indelible mark. The mural wasn't just art, it was a reflection of the bonds she had forged, the bridges she had built, and the love she had shared. It reminded her that even the smallest acts of kindness could create waves of change, touching lives in ways she might never fully understand. That winter, Evelyn fell ill, her body finally succumbing to the wear and tear of decades spent working tirelessly for others. News of her condition spread quickly, drawing visitors from near and far to pay their respects. The Hells Angels organized vigils outside the diner, their motorcycles lined up silently as a tribute to the woman who had believed in them when few others did. Former employees, regular patrons, and strangers whose lives she had touched gathered to share stories, tears, and laughter. Even Sarah's son, Liam, now a teenager, spoke fondly of the grandmotherly figure who had always made him feel special. When Evelyn passed away peacefully in her sleep, the entire town mourned her loss. Her funeral was attended by hundreds, including dignitaries, activists, and media personalities who had been inspired by her story. Yet, it was the ordinary people, those whose lives she had directly impacted, who truly honored her memory. They spoke of her kindness, her courage, and her unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity. Jack delivered a eulogy that captured the essence of who she was. Evelyn taught us that courage isn't about being fearless, it's about choosing to do the right thing, even when you're scared. She showed us that love can conquer hate, and unity can overcome division. We will carry her legacy forward, not just in words but in actions. In the months following her passing, Evelyn's Corner underwent subtle changes. A new sign was installed above the entrance, bearing the name Evelyn's Legacy Corner. Inside, a wall was dedicated to her memory, adorned with photographs, letters, and memorabilia chronicling her remarkable journey. The annual Ride for Unity continued, drawing record numbers of participants eager to celebrate the woman who had brought them together. And though Evelyn was no longer physically present, her spirit lingered in every corner of the diner, in the laughter of children, the camaraderie of bikers, and the gratitude of those who found solace within its walls. Years later, as a young girl sat at a table in the diner sketching pictures of motorcycles and rainbows, she asked her mother, "Who was Evelyn?" Her mother smiled, pointing to the mural on the wall. "She was a brave woman who stood up for what was right and brought everyone together. Because of her, this place exists, not just as a diner, but as a home for all of us." The girl nodded, thoughtfully, adding a drawing of Evelyn to her notebook alongside images of bikes and balloons. In that moment, the cycle of inspiration continued, ensuring that Evelyn's legacy would endure for generations to come. Through laughter, tears, trials, and triumphs, Evelyn had forged bonds that transcended stereotypes and united communities. She had proven that love and determination could overcome fear and prejudice, inspiring countless others to follow in her footsteps. And though fame and recognition had found her, she remained steadfast in her belief that true fulfillment came from serving others. For Evelyn, The true reward lay not in accolades or headlines, but in the daily reminders of what it meant to live authentically, to embrace humanity in all its forms and build bridges where none existed before. And as long as Evelyn's corner stood, so too would the bonds she forged with those who called themselves Hell's Angels.